Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 8th of January. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on Arirang TV. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look what's making the headlines. 12 people have been killed in a shooting at the headquarters of the French satirical weekly Charlie Hebdo. 11 more people have been injured. The gunmen, suspected to have links to Islamic terrorism, remain at large. Washington's intelligence director James Clapper calls the hacking attack against Sony Pictures the most serious attack of its type against the United States. Plus, Samsung Electronics estimates its operating profit in the fourth quarter plunged by some 37% from a year earlier, topping off what has been a year to forget for its core smartphone business. We begin with the awful events that unfolded in Paris, and France is in shock in the wake of the worst terrorist attack the country has seen in many a decade. A massive manhunt is still underway for the three gunmen behind this mass murder at the office of a French satirical magazine. This magazine has thumbed its nose at radical Islam in the past with cartoons that were designed to be controversial. 12 are dead and around 10 others injured, some critically. We connect live to Eunice Kim for the latest on this story. Now, Eunice, French authorities say they have now identified the shooters.
That's right, Mark. The deputy mayor of Paris, Patrick Klugmans, has said the shooters are French nationals, two of them brothers in their 30s and another an 18-year-old from the suburbs. Authorities are scrambling to locate and arrest them as President François Hollande called this an attack against the French Republic.
This shooting of extreme violence killed 12 people and injured several more. Greatly talented cartoonists, courageous journalists are dead. They left their mark on generations and generations of French. Through their influence, through their insolence, through their rare independence. Here, I want to say to them that this message of freedom, we will continue to defend it in their name.
Soon after the noontime shooting, France was put on its highest terrorist alert. Thursday has been designated a day of mourning for the country. On Wednesday, two hooded gunmen armed with AK-47 stormed an editorial meeting at the offices of Charlie Hebdo. They were very methodical and intentional in their movements, reportedly calling out their victims' names before shooting them execution style, starting with the editor-in-chief Sharb as well as other prominent cartoonists who were in that room. Now, minutes later, the shooters were seen leaving the building to get into a waiting black car, but they reportedly got away when they ditched that vehicle and hijacked into another. Altogether, 12 people are dead, including 8 journalists and 2 police officers. The magazine, Charlie Hebdo, had been under tight security, especially after its offices were firebombed in 2011, after it issued a cover featuring a caricature of Prophet Muhammad, which is considered blasphemy in many Muslim circles.
Well, there are many Western newspapers that are showing unity with that publication by printing a lot of the covers that magazine put out, but truly shocking events all round. But let's hear more about the alleged shooters, Eunice. We know their names have been released. What do we know about them so far?
Well, details are still sketchy at this point, Mark, but there are reports that the two brothers had returned from Syria this summer. They have been named as Saeed and Sharif Kouachi, 34 and 32 years old. And Saeed was reportedly part of an Iraqi jihadi network and spent 3 years in prison on terror charges. Now, according to reports, police had been looking for the 18-year-old who lives in Reims, reportedly, which is 140 kilometers northeast of Paris. In fact, heavily armed anti-terror forces are there on this Wednesday night, going door to door to hunt for the 3 men.
Well, we hope they're caught very, very soon and without any more people being injured or losing their lives. And the people of the world are reacting to this horrific event, and they're rallying behind France in what really is their time of need now.
Absolutely. One philosopher writer called this France's 9/11, and people in France are standing up as well, holding up signs that say "Je suis Charlie Hebdo," which means "I am Charlie Hebdo." And world leaders also reacted within hours as well, condemning this attack.
This horrific attack is meant to divide. We must not fall into that trap. This is a moment for solidarity around the world. We must stand strong for freedom of expression and tolerance and stand against the forces of division and hate.
This country stands united with the French people in our opposition to all forms of terrorism, and we stand squarely for free speech and democracy. And these people will never be able to take us off those values.
Candlelight vigils were being held in cities across Europe as well. Here, outside the French embassy in Berlin, hundreds of people came out to show solidarity with the victims and their families. Also, a massive crowd of thousands of people has also materialized in central Paris at the Place de la République, showing their resolve that they will not back down.
OK, Eunice, thank you ever so much for your very detailed report there, and you'll be continuing to follow the developments for us, and we'll see you back again at our next newscast at noon Korea time.
See you then.
Now, in the rest of the day's news, and part of the tail of the crashed AirAsia flight 8501 has been found in the Java Sea. Indonesian searchers say it was found in a secondary search area. This lends a great deal of weight to theories that strong currents have moved the debris. The head of the search team says the tail was spotted by teams involving divers and unmanned underwater vehicles. You can see some pictures of the debris there. It's buried in mud. It's about 30 meters under the water, and it's believed to be flipped upside down. Now, finding the tail is a very significant development, as it does house the black boxes. These are the voice and flight data recorders, which could hopefully give investigators some clues about what caused this crash. We still don't know the full details, of course. 40 bodies have been recovered so far, but the authorities believe many of the 122 other people that were on board that ill-fated plane may still be strapped inside the main body of that aircraft. This plane was lost en route from Surabaya, Indonesia, while it was headed to Singapore on December 28th. Now, Washington's top intelligence chief has warned there's a high probability North Korea will launch even more cyber attacks on the United States in the future. Speaking at a cybersecurity conference in New York on Wednesday, U.S. Director of National Intelligence James Clapper said the recent hacking on Sony Pictures was the most serious attack of its kind against U.S. interests and resulted in huge financial losses. Clapper went on to say that for Pyongyang, cyber attacks are a cheap but very powerful means of influence. He added that if nothing is done to punish North Korea, the regime will continue to lash out as cyber attacks garner huge international attention for the North. Now, Pyongyang has condemned the United States for slapping sanctions on its officials and organizations for this cyber attack on Sony Pictures. North Korea continues to deny it was involved. And as a follow-up to that story, North Korea has called on the US government within the last few hours or so to lift those recently applied sanctions on the country, again denying it had nothing to do with the hacking attack on Sony Pictures. Now, Pyongyang's demand comes roughly 1 week after US President Barack Obama signed an executive order authorizing sanctions against 3 North Korean entities and 10 officials, on top of those imposed on the North for its past nuclear tests and missile launches. The North's National Defense Commission says the latest sanctions are hostile and repugnant, and as they're imposed with no solid evidence linking the North to the hacking, the Commission said Washington should remove the punitive measures right now or face the threat of a military response. North Korea says activists' continued campaign of flying anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border is hindering efforts to improve inter-Korean ties. The regime says it will refuse to hold talks with Seoul until the launches cease. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
North Korea warned South Korea on Wednesday to stop private groups from flying anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border if it really wants to resume dialogue. The North state-run Korean Central News Agency said South Korea is challenging North Korea's sincerity for improved bilateral ties and spoiling the mood for talks by turning a blind eye to the leaflet launches. 2 days ago, a group of South Korean activists flew 600,000 leaflets that criticized the North Korean leadership. Putting an end to the leaflet campaign was one of the preconditions to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's apparent proposal for talks in his New Year's speech. South Korea has refused to step in, saying it has no legal grounds to ban acts of freedom of expression. But Unification Ministry spokesperson Im Byung-chul said Wednesday the government will try to prevent the situation from getting out of hand.
We will cooperate with police in implementing safety measures to reduce possible dangers to the lives and property of our people.
A local court ruled Tuesday that authorities can restrict the leaflet launches if they jeopardize public safety. In October last year, North Korea opened fire across the border in an attempt to shoot down the balloons that were carrying the controversial leaflets. The Unification Ministry once again called on North Korea to accept its proposal for talks with no preconditions if it's serious about improving inter-Korean relations. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
And North Korea has called on the South Korean government to plainly state its stance on the flying of leaflets. Not only that, but also its unification aims and its joint military exercises with Washington. Pyongyang's state-run Korean Central News Agency says Seoul should be upfront with the North on all those issues. It also wants the South Korean government to lay out what kind of unification it wants, as the North is deeply opposed to the idea of the South absorbing the North. Now, without mentioning President Park Geun-hye by name, Pyongyang also denounced her when she told Seoul's unification, the Special Committee on Unification, last month to bring about meaningful change from the North. The North Korean news agency also said North Korea is keeping a close eye on South Korea's next move.
Said that a team of South Korea...
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. Arirang News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers 15 billion. Now, Korea's Samsung Electronics says its operating profits in the fourth quarter of last year likely tumbled around 37.5% at some $4.7 billion US. That guidance figure, however, beat analysts' expectations. A mean estimate of more than 40 analysts polled by Reuters had forecast profits of $4.5 billion. It isn't all gloomy news, however, as Samsung says the fourth quarter profits were actually up 28% compared to the previous quarter, the third quarter of 2014. Fourth quarter sales likely fell more than 12% on year to some $47 billion. The final earnings figures are due to be released later this month. Now, Korea and Colombia agreed on a free trade deal nearly 2 years ago now, but the pact has yet to be ratified in Colombia, due mostly to the country's auto industry opposing the deal. Colombia's foreign minister was in the Korean capital this week to assure officials here that the deal will be finalized soon. Connie Kim has more.
Korea will soon have greater access to Colombia, the third largest Latin American market, and its population of 48 million. Wrapping up her two-day visit to Seoul on Wednesday, Colombian Foreign Minister Maria Angela Olguin met with Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and pledged to speed up ratification of the Korea-Colombia FTA that was signed nearly 2 years ago.
I am happy to say that our Congress approved the trade pact. Once the deal is reviewed by the Constitutional Court, the free trade agreement could be ratified in the coming months.
The holdup is mostly on the Colombian side amid concerns among the auto industry there, as a tariff on Korean automobiles will be lifted over a 10-year period. Although the current rate stands at 35%, there is still strong demand for Korean automobiles in Colombia. Of total bilateral trade in 2013, exports of Korean cars and auto parts to Colombia made up more than 80%. Olgin said the concerns within Colombia are manageable, considering that Korean automobiles that come into the country via the U.S. or Mexico come in tariff-free.
Given this situation, I believe the problem related to the auto industry's backlash can be solved.
She added that subsidiaries would be given out to the auto sector to ease concerns. Now, when the bilateral trade pact goes into effect, the Korean market will have cheaper access to Colombia's most popular export items, such as coffee, coal, and metals. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, the Eurozone has another headache to contend with because the currency bloc has officially slumped into deflation for the first time in 5 years as oil prices continue to tumble. According to the European Statistics Office's end-of-year estimates on Wednesday, consumer prices across the Eurozone dropped 0.2% in December from the same month in 2013. Last month's fall was mostly attributed to the free-falling oil prices. Now, Brent crude has slipped to roughly $50 a barrel, having plunged more than half since last year's high of $115. Analysts say declining oil prices are expected to increase business and consumer spending, which is good, of course. But on the flip side, a long period of falling prices can choke the economy, which is already pretty weak there, and it's very difficult to get out of. And Korea has its own worries about deflation because falling global oil prices have some analysts here in Seoul as well concerned that it could push the economy towards a deflationary path. But Korea's finance minister is firm that that's not going to happen. Choi Kyung-hwan says a drop will help the Korean economy, the drop in oil prices, by bringing down prices of imported raw materials, and eventually it's going to boost domestic demand, he says. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has dismissed concerns that falling oil prices could lead to deflation. In fact, he says the declines could actually help boost domestic demand as the prices of imports fall. At an economic ministerial meeting on Wednesday, Choi said that the decline in oil prices is fundamentally different from deflation, which occurs due to a shortage of demand rather than an oversupply. He also cited projections from 5 state-run institutes, which forecast that Korea could save $30 billion in oil import expenses if crude prices maintain an average of $63 per barrel. His remarks came amid concerns that deflation is spreading in the Korean economy, currently struggling from sluggish domestic consumption and low inflation rate increases. Some local institutions in Seoul even compare the recession in Korea to that of Japan's long-term economic slump in the 1990s. In response, the finance minister said that the government would increasingly pursue policies to make sure the benefits stemming from falling oil prices help boost domestic consumption and thus the economic recovery. Also during the meeting, Choi vowed to pursue policies that would boost financing from venture capitals and for high-tech innovative industries. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Korea posted stable growth last year in terms of outbound shipments, exports and R&D investments. But are Korean companies going to be able to maintain that momentum and protect themselves from external risks as we head further into 2015? Here's our Song Ji-sun with the outlook.
Korea fared relatively well last year despite slowing global demand and a sluggish economic recovery at home. But the outlook for this year is not at all that bright. The machineries and semiconductor industries are expected to enjoy growth this year, backed by steady demand from the U.S. Free trade agreements struck with a dozen countries in recent years have given a boost to the auto parts and textile sectors. But handset producers will be faced with tough competition in the global market, especially in China, where cheap local manufacturers like Xiaomi and Huawei are quickly gaining ground on Samsung and LG Electronics. Chinese companies are catching up with Korean manufacturers in terms of their technological advances, and their cheap prices and mass production capabilities help their output surpass Korea's, both in the shipbuilding and auto sectors. Considering that half of Korean export items compete with Japanese products on the international stage, the weakening Japanese yen remains a risk for Korean exporters. Industry analysts say companies need to stick to what they're good at while improving their quality and reducing costs.
Companies must give up on sectors that are not performing well and focus their resources and manpower on sectors that are excelling in the market.
In fact, the overhaul has already started. Samsung sold its petrochemical sectors to Hanwha Group last year, while Hyundai Steel acquired Dongbu Special Steel. Such M&As and restructuring will speed up this year. 송지선, Arirang News.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off in Formula One racing, where after several provisional schedules were released, it's confirmed now that the Korean Grand Prix will be left off in the 2015 season. Now, according to Bernie Ecclestone, the head of Formula One management, he had to include the Korean Grand Prix in the provisional schedules in order to avoid legal actions from the local organizers. And while a breach of contract lawsuit was an issue to be worried about, it's highly unlikely that a lawsuit will take place, as experts believe that the event will be left off in the 2016 calendar as well. Now, it's true that there has been less interest in figure skating here in the nation ever since the figure queen Kim Yeon-ah retired from the sport last year, but come on, it's not like NBA fans don't watch the game because Michael Jordan retired many years ago, right? Well, figure skating fans in the nation headed over to the Mokdong Ice Rink on Tuesday as the 2015 National Figure Skating Championship kicked off. Now, despite Kim Yeon-ah not competing in the event, all eyes are on Yeon-ah's kids, especially Park So-yeon, who is looking to win her first gold medal in the event. Meanwhile, on the final day of the event, Kim Yeon-ah will be on hand to give out the medals to the winners. Now, yesterday, 4 former major leaguers were voted into baseball's Hall of Fame, and 3 of them were pitchers in Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, and John Smoltz. But here in Korea, fans are looking forward to the 2016 Hall of Fame class, as another pitcher will be eligible for a Cooperstown for the first time. And that, of course, is Park Chan-ho, who is one of the names listed for the eligibility in 2016. Now, the 42-year-old doesn't have the kind of numbers Randy Johnson or Pedro Martinez had, but he was the first Korean player to play in the majors and holds the record for the most wins by an Asian pitcher with 124. And while fans in the nation already have their fingers crossed, experts believe that it'll be quite tough for him to get the call. Now, football, or soccer as it's called in some parts of the world, is the most popular sport in the world. But it's no secret that one of the things that taints the sport is all the diving and the, oh, I'm hurt when I'm not moments that we often see on the pitch, right? But the Asian Football Confederation plans to regulate all of that during the upcoming 2015 Asian Cup in Australia, where the officials plan to get more strict on hard tackles, simulations, and time-killing actions by the players. Meanwhile, the 2015 Asian Cup kicks off tomorrow as Korea play their first group stage match on Saturday against Oman. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, dress extra warm today. Cold snap is in full swing as the brutal cold will continue to blast the whole nation. The lows have dropped to near -10 this morning, though the highs will be slightly higher than yesterday and it will be much milder tomorrow. And today there will be nothing but sunshine thanks to the high pressure front, which is bringing us lots of sunshine to the whole peninsula. But don't be fooled by that sun. It's freezing outside, as the daily high here in the capital will only peak at freezing mark, while Daegu and Gwangju will rise to 6 and Busan will top out at 8 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, it looks like Jeju Island will be rising to 8, while Daejeon and Dokdo both will be getting up to 4 this afternoon. Now just hang in there a bit more. Cold snap will break starting tomorrow afternoon, with highs finally getting up to the positive side, and temperatures will remain on the seasonal averages for the time being. But that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now. Plenty more stories worth checking out online, and we'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. Until then, goodbye.